Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I have one of the most impressive gentlemen to introduce you tonight I've ever had the privilege of meeting. I don't know, a couple of decades ago, bumped into him at the pool at some apartments that I was staying at the time in Los Angeles. And he ends up being one of the most impressive, involved live event, Broadway event, TV special event producers that you can imagine. And on Facebook, on LinkedIn, he's constantly promoting some of the events, and it's just amazing. The events that he's produced, the awards that he's received. I want to introduce you to Scott Mauro. Scott, how are you?
Brian, how you doing, Brian?
Very well. So you just arrived from New York, and you're in LA right now. Is that correct?
That's correct. I got back from New York last night, and I'm back home in Los Angeles for the time being.
Because you just relaunched a show or reopened a show?
Correct. Dear Evan Hansen reopened on Broadway, which was very exciting. And then I was in meetings about some new shows for next season.
Tell us about the show on Broadway and what's it about? How long was it closed down?
Okay, well, we closed all my shows, obviously, on tour and on Broadway and in London. We closed because of the pandemic in mid-March of 2020. And we've been reopening since Labor Day across the board, whether it be on tour, whether it be in Europe and on Broadway. And I still have Beetlejuice, which I'm a producer on, the musical, which opens back up in April.
It's got to have been devastating for you, for the actors and actresses, for the theaters, et cetera. How did they all deal with it?
Well, frankly, everybody was out of work. And thank goodness for government programs like PPP and the SVOG, which was Save Our Theaters. So, we got grants to survive. I was very fortunate. I pivoted to virtual events because I have done TV specials. So I was able to do virtual award shows and variety shows and even a virtual walk for cancer. A fundraiser for a pet rescue center, with big stars who I had relationships with who just transitioned to virtual events. So I was one of the lucky ones. In fact, the craziest thing was I won an award. I didn't even know I was nominated, and I heard of the awards. And after I won with my partner, my co-executive producer, we found out it was a big deal. It was for Best Virtual Award Show of the Year, obviously online it was the Telly Awards. And that's what we won. And it's really heavy, and it looks like the Oscar. It was hilarious. It was just so funny to win something we didn't know we were nominated for, nor did we know existed. But turned out it was a big deal. It was a big story in the LA Times.
Well, congratulations for that. And you've got numerous different nominations and awards. Tell us a little bit about them, if you could.
Let's see. Yeah. I've been nominated 3 times for an Emmy. For different variety shows or documentaries. And one of the shows I did was I worked with Judd Apatow, and the show won best special for the Gary Shandling Memorial. It was basically, we did a live event in LA, a big tribute with everybody you could think of, from Adam Sandler to Johnny Depp to Tom Petty, and the audience had just amazing stars. And then it also combined with the documentary about Gary and his dedication to not only his craft, but to future generations. So that was very exciting. And it was really cool to work with Judd Apatow, the director and producer. And we're both from Long Island in New York. So we bonded over that, which was really kind of fun. And then let's see, Dear Evan Hansen won a Tony Award for Best Musical. We won the Olivier Award for the Best Musical in England. And I was nominated, I guess, a total of 3 times. I don't really think about it too often, but Tootsie was nominated for Best Musical. Beetlejuice was nominated for Best Musical. Oh, and The Glass Menagerie was for Best Revival of a Play a couple of seasons ago. And now Tootsie and Dear Evan Hansen are on tour across the country.
Fantastic. Scott, you've always amazed me with your career. Tell me a little bit how you got into it. Like when we bumped into each other, you were doing work for Disney. How did you get launched into this show business world?
Well, it was something that I dreamed of doing since I was 9 years old. back in New York. So I went to college and actually prepared for it in terms of like a communications, media marketing career and I focused only on entertainment. I started out as a publicist doing movies and Broadway shows and some publicity for various stars. And then the marketing led to me doing work closely with people like Frank Sinatra, Diana Ross, Liza Minnelli, Cher, Bowie, Pat Benatar. It just went on and on. And when you have a good relationship or you have successful projects, they sort of bring you in. Oh, you want to work on this TV special? Do you want to work on the Tony Awards? Do you want to work on Central Park show? How about a music video? And then I was in New York. I had just done a tribute to Hal Prince with Michael Crawford when Phantom of the Opera opened, and a big success with Liza Minnelli. I think it was like two-week concert at Carnegie Hall at the time. So Disney recruited me, and they moved my wife and I out to Los Angeles to be head of TV specials for NBC. And that's where, when we were in Burbank, that's where we met. You and I, when we were both, I think you had just relocated to LA also.
I did. Right. It was amazing. You guys were our first friends in LA.
That's right. I remember distinctly.
And I always used to joke.
A lot of fun times. Really, those were really fun times if you think about it.
They were. And I used to joke with people that whenever I met people and they asked where I worked and I said Disney, they all got excited until they realized that I didn't have anything close to your job. I was just the finance guy. What they really wanted to do is meet someone like you.
Yeah. Yeah, but they don't realize that the guys behind the scenes, we're all behind the scenes, but it's like I always say you had like the more important job, you know what I mean? Because we can't be, we can say, oh, we want to do this. I want to, build an incredible set or hire this incredible star, but it all comes down to budget considerations and who's going to deliver, in my case, good ratings, et cetera.
It's interesting. I, in that regard, had a fascinating conversation with Frank Wells, who you remember was president of the Walt Disney Company at the time. And he said his job as the president and the legal financial guy was to create a box from a budgetary standpoint, a revenue standpoint, et cetera, that Michael Eisner, the creative guy, could bounce around in the side and be as creative as he want, but he couldn't go outside of the boundaries that Frank had created for himself. And he says, you got to have that mixture where the box is wide enough that they can be creative and go crazy, but not so wide as they can go bankrupt and cause a real financial problem.
I have to say, both those men were incredibly good to me. Michael interviewed me after many rounds. He gave me the job. I've seen him around town. He's never forgotten. I mean, he's amazing. I really thank him tremendously. And Frank Wells was so supportive on some of the bigger shows that we had. Some of the shows had $2.5 million budgets, some had $4.5 million budgets, which you don't see in TV anymore for variety specials. And Frank was incredibly supportive, amazing, personal phone calls, calls of encouragement, and I remember them very vividly.
We're chatting tonight with Scott Mauro, who is a live event producer, TV special producer, live event contests, award show producer, and one of the most amazing guys in LA that I've had the privilege of knowing over the course of the past couple of decades. Stay with us. We're going to take a break and come back more with Scott in just a minute. We're going to talk about some of the people that he's worked with and some of the experiences he has had. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. We're chatting tonight with Scott Mauro, who is a fascinating gentleman. He is an event producer, lives in Los Angeles, has this sort of bi-coastal life in New York and LA. I met him about 3 decades ago in beautiful downtown Burbank, where we were both at the time working for the Walt Disney Company. And Scott, you've had an amazing career because you've been a producer of specials, of award shows, of live events, of Broadway shows, of touring Broadway shows. It's just amazing the sort of the breadth of different shows and events that you've been involved in. Is it the promotion that you specialize in, or the organization, or what?
I hate to say this, but all of the above, because I started out in promotion. I started out, as I said, doing marketing, and I did develop a niche But the funny thing is, it's what I always wanted. So it's only when I look back that I go, holy cow. But when I'm doing it, I'm like, well, this is what I was born to do. This is my calling. So now when I look back and say, gee, I was 23 years old. I was handling Frank Sinatra. I was handling Liza Minnelli. I was handling, Julio Iglesias, these big names back in the day. And I thought, gee, that was pretty amazing for that spin, that time period. But I grew up with that dream. And, just, in fact, my friends from high school, even my friends to tell you the truth, my friends from elementary school, they're not surprised. This is who I was. I was very focused, and I just nose to the grindstone. And
How did that
I'm
dream
very
come
fortunate
about? I
that
know
it
you
all
grew
came
up in,
together.
I knew you grew up in Long Island, but did you go to Broadway a lot? Like, how did you get this dream?
Yes. When you grow up in New York, whether it be the suburbs, it's a habit that your parents really instill. My parents, in addition to, say, the Met games and football games, etc., we went to movies all the time. We went to concerts, and we would always take the train in to go see Broadway shows. So, like, my first show was Fiddler on the Roof, the original production, and then it was Hello, Dolly, then it was Man of La Mancha. And in high school, they would take you on junior high. You would go on trips, like, the Spanish Club went to see Man of La Mancha, things like that. It's just something, and museums and Central Park Zoo. It's just, when you're around a cultural mecca, it's part of your growing up period. And for me, it was the movie Mary Poppins. I used to be embarrassed to tell this story, but now I kind of think it's kind of fascinating. I was 9 years old and I saw Mary Poppins with my family on it was like a cold November, December night. And I'll never forget the Jolly Holiday scene, which combined this animation with Dick Van Dyke and Julie Andrews with, live action. And I was so mesmerized when Julie Andrews picked up this bouquet of flowers, which then became butterflies, of multicolored butterflies that just flew off. And it was all animated. And I just went, wow. And I wanted to create that feeling that I had in other people when I grew up. And the kicker to the story is I actually got to work with Julie Andrews several times. Wonderful. And Dick Van Dyke several times, and one of the Sherman brothers who wrote the music. And I thought, this is full circle. That was that was really the culmination of a childhood dream. But that moment really inspired me, and it still gets me very deeply.
Well, that's wonderful. I remember sitting around a pool with you, and you telling me that Liza Minnelli was one of the most wonderful performers that you had worked with, and that you were very friendly with, and that you had some special times with her. Can you tell us about Liza Minnelli at all?
Oh, sure. And it's true. People always ask me, who is the worst person I ever worked with and who is the nicest? And I find most of them are very nice. Most are great. So, I mean it, whether it be Reese Witherspoon, delightful. Diana Ross and I really work well together, still are close. Bowie was really impressive, really intelligent. And it's real, even, Katy Perry, off the charts, great, lovely, Pink. I really, I don't really have a lot of sordid stories, so I'm, everybody wants the dirt. But with Liza, so I started up doing her advertising and her marketing when she was on tour. And then she sort of brought me in on a lot of different projects. And like when my son was born, she sent me a beautiful, beautiful gift that we still have, actually. And then, like, if we had new albums that came out, and she was all about the work, which was fantastic. And she knew, she comes from a showbiz background, so she knew that the work is great, but she also had to promote it. And I would come up with these crazy, I named 6th Avenue Liza Minnelli Way one year, the opening night at Radio City. And she got up on a ladder and, like, unveiled the marquee, unveiled the street sign. And it was really fun that I found some of my most creative moments with her. And like one time we were trying a show out in Buffalo and this number wasn't working. And she said, it's not working, we have to cut it. and the amount of money that went into those orchestrations and the costuming, but she was always about the show and always about the team. When we did Radio City, there were probably 16 ladies in the chorus, if I'm not mistaken, and they were dancers and singers, and everything was about the team. In fact, I remember one number where everybody was in red. And I said, you should be in red and everyone should be in white, or you should be in white and everyone else should be in red, thinking that's normally what they would do in a movie, big production number. And she wanted to be one of the girls.
Really?
Yeah, and she was always terrific to everybody, opening night gifts, and I really, very special. We're still in touch. And I always say she was really out of everybody, she was always being really warm and fuzzy kind of person.
And you had a long-term relationship with her, both work as well as personal.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like, I think now when I look back and I think about it, well, I worked with Liza and Sinatra and Steve Lawrence and Edie Gourmet for 18 years until they retired.
18 years.
Yep. And Diana Ross, I started working with in 1982. And I'm still working with her. We just did this big 75th birthday celebration. It was her Diamond Jubilee, which I worked on or actually helped create for her. I don't even know how many years that is. And as a producer, I just finished, UNICEF just celebrated their 75th birthday, which again is their Diamond Jubilee. And we did 10 live events in 10 cities last Tuesday, all in one night. It was on Giving Tuesday. So that was like New York, LA, Dallas, Houston, on and on, Washington, DC, Boston. So I created the show and my team, with my team, and we had a lieutenant in each city that executed it. And honestly, it came off flawlessly. UNICEF made $10.5 million in one night, and that's still going. And I've worked with UNICEF since 1988. So to me, I don't say I take it for granted, but I just take it matter of fact. But when I do sit back, it resonates even more deeply.
That's spectacular. So
especially in a business where there's not a lot of loyalty,
Exactly.
I can't say everybody is that, but I've been very fortunate.
Well, I remember having a good conversation with you where you were thinking about going full-time with Disney versus sort of the ad hoc contract stuff that you had been doing with different people, and that you enjoyed the variety and the different work with so many different people in so many different sort of functional areas, the advertising, the marketing, the promotion, the organization, et cetera. And so you've always been independent, I think, haven't you?
Yeah, what happened was I got a call from Cher, and at the same time, I think Joan Rivers, and Cher was going to go on tour with If I Could Turn Back Time. So I worked with her starting then. And then it was her first concert tour, or first concerts without Sonny. And so I had like I want to say her manager gave me an 18-month contract. And then the show wound up on CBS as a TV special, which we did a live concert from Vegas. So I was very fortunate that I could have that security since I was starting a family, so that I could open my own production company. And I want to say that was probably 30 years ago now, give or take. And then Joan Rivers was doing this talk show, and she said, I got to have you, as a creative consultant on the show. And I would say actually Joan Rivers also was very, very special, very close. She was more like an aunt than just a client. And we hit
more like an aunt, really?
Yeah. Yeah, well, Brian, you don't know this, but if it wasn't for Joan Rivers, I wouldn't be a father.
Really?
Isn't that a compelling headline?
That is. Tell me the story.
Well, I was working on a show, her talk show, and I had worked with her. She had come to see me when I was living in New York, and I started working with her, doing a lot of creative work, doing a lot of marketing work, and we hit it off. And then she was doing this talk show. It wasn't going so well. And she wanted me I came to New York she moved me to New York for 3 months, which was funny since I'm a native New Yorker and I had recently left New York. And we were having some trouble conceiving and having a baby. And I was going to give up. And Joan was the one who grabbed me backstage, dug her nails into my wrist and said, it's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it. don't give up. I'll set you up with the best doctors. And yeah, sure. Sure enough, Monday morning, this was a Friday. Monday morning, she had appointments for us in Beverly Hills with these specialists. They did get to the bottom of the problem. We had a form of treatment, and about a year and a half later, our son was born. And to this, like, I mean, every time she saw him, she would say, you know, Jason, if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't be here. I'm your Aunt Joan, you know. And she just took great delight in, I got to tell you, she took such delight in my success. We would get together. She actually invested in some of my Broadway shows and had a blast. We just had this very, very special connection. And just, I miss her terribly. In fact, when she passed, they were giving me updates and stuff, and it was just really a sad, really tough time.
That's a very special story. Thanks for sharing it with us, Scott. We're going to take another break for some messages and come back with Scott Mauro. And I'm going to ask him a little bit about trends in the industry and in media and in TV and movies and production and things like that when we come back. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I'm introducing you tonight to Scott Mauro, who is a event producer, marketer, promoter, organizer of TV specials, of music events, of Broadway, of off-Broadway. Scott, you seemingly have done it all. Is there any media that you haven't done? Have you done feature films?
I have been an executive producer, and I do have a script that I've optioned. Funny you should say that I really like. Sort of like kind of reminds me of Inception that Christopher Nolan did with Leonardo DiCaprio. I'm trying to. I do have, like, a lot of people say, what windmill do you have left that you want to toil? And I want to do a comedy on Broadway. That's what I want to do, a comedy, because especially now, everything is so filled with angst, and people are just so miserable, you know, unhappy, angry. And there's something really wonderful when you all sit in a theater, whether it be a movie or a Broadway show, and you are laughing together. We were working on the Tonys, and a couple of years ago, we went to see Kevin Kline, who was nominated in Present Laughter, which is this old no comedy show. I had worked on the show with, let me think now, George C. Scott, when he did the advertising. I did the advertising for that show back in New York. So it had come back again. It must have been 25 years later. And Kevin Kline was terrific. And it was something to sit in a packed Broadway house. And I turned around, and just to see everybody laughing was it was a wonderful feeling. And, you know, there used to be a lot of comedies on Broadway, and we don't have them that much anymore. A lot of those writers write for TV now or for the movies. So I'm constantly reading to find a comedy that could, you know, be a terrific comedy that's also commercial. Larry David had a success with a comedy that he started, and then Jason Alexander took over the role. And, you know, it's that story, if you build it, they will come.
Right.
You know, if you structure it right, you know, it is a business. That's the thing. People say, well, why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? Well, if you continue to lose $3.5 million on a show, or 16 or 20 million on a musical, or, you know, or a movie that doesn't very quick with the audience, how many times can you go to the well? And it is a business. That's the interesting thing.
So I was thinking about asking you about trends. You know, when you and I first met, you know, the internet was just at its beginning. Right. I think I had gotten my second, maybe my third computer, and it was, you know, just terrible at the time. And since then, you know, we've had the demise of videos, of CDs, of Blockbuster, and you know, a complete change in so many different you know, things in the world. What do you think the future is of live entertainment, of Broadway, of theater, of music production, of concerts? What's your sense? Right.
Well, I think, like everybody, it's remarkable to see how streaming has just taken over. Everybody is streaming. And it doesn't, at one point, everyone was like, oh, that's for the younger people and stuff. But I know plenty of seniors that are streaming everything on Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon. I think it's all about content. People will find it wherever it is, and I do think, even me, there are some movies that I'll watch on my computer, or there are some movies I'll watch on my home theater, but there are some movies that I want to go see in the theater. Even if it's a Marvel movie, that's like a big screen, and you want to see it with people. And sometimes you just want to go. Recently we saw a movie that wasn't that great, but we just wanted to go to the movies. We were tired of watching everything at home. For one, I can't wait to see West Side Story on a big screen. That I think should be on a big screen. And it got such wonderful reviews. And interestingly enough, it didn't do great business, which was kind of shocking to everybody. That's the big headlines today in Hollywood, is that it underperformed. But I do think with COVID, it's really tough, because maybe the audience that would see West Side Story is still scared about COVID and the new variants, because it would probably attract an older audience, and those people are still a little hesitant. But I have to say, in Broadway, I think Broadway is at an interesting point, because we're having more diverse programming and more diverse and inclusive casts, and some of the shows are working, some of them aren't. But if you look at what's on Broadway right now, it's really interesting, because even the subject matter is diverse. You have shows like Phantom and Wicked that are still performing, and you have revivals like The Music Man, which is a big star vehicle for Hugh Jackman. But then you have like Dear Evan Hansen, which deals with a very serious subject that has really captured the culture and appeals to everybody. And then you have, Jagged Little Pill, which is Alanis Morissette, which is a very, really focuses not only on her music, but social issues. And then you have Moulin Rouge, which is a big, splashy, old-fashioned, I shouldn't say old-fashioned, but I mean, it has the great music and it's very contemporary, but it's just a feast for the eyes, which people, people just love it, because you see the costumes, you see the pyrotechnics, you just see, the great music and the dancing and the story. And then you have like Sarah Jessica Parker and Matthew Broderick, which is doing a Neil Simon comedy, a revival. And again, that's going to be, that's just complete star power.
So Scott, this West Side Story, is an interesting case study, because it was only in theaters, I understand. And you would have thought with, this new variant that people are worried about with COVID-19, with some, I was in Florida recently, everything's wide open, and it's as if COVID, wasn't a concern of anyone. And then I was in New York recently as well, and there it's sort of the opposite scenario, where everyone is still very worried. I would have thought that it should have been distributed online, streamed, as well as in theaters. What do you think?
I agree with you. And again, our country is so divided in terms of the COVID situation. And you're right. I was in New York, in LA, they're taking it very seriously, but also our vaccinations are higher because people are more motivated, shall we say. And like Michigan, the hospitals are jam-packed. And it's a little scary. But I would have, as a marketing guy in the business, I would have streamed on Disney Plus and given people the option to go to the theater or not. And I know Steven Spielberg was insistent that it be only in movie theaters, which I think was a mistake. But I do understand his rationale. It's a big movie. Everything about it, the cinematography, the choreography, cries out to see it on a big screen. But I know a lot of people that, that movie appeals to, that won't go to a movie theater just yet. They won't go to a Broadway theater just yet. But I just got back from New York, and it was real interesting. I went to a couple of shows, including my own, and it was handled so beautifully. You cannot go to a Broadway show in New York or a restaurant unless you have proof of vaccination. And they handled it beautifully. I have to say, there was a line, everybody showed their proof. with an ID card, and it didn't take that long. And even nobody was ugly about it. And Broadway is running at about 85% right now, which is terrific. We seem to have gotten the momentum back. And the streets of New York were jammed, just like pre-COVID for Christmas, a lot of out-of-towners, and, there's nothing like New York at Christmas, as you know.
There is no place like New York.
It was really
No
exciting and
question.
fun, and it was great to be back. And I mean, we just have to go with the changing times. I mean, I would think you grab the revenue from all these different streams.
But long term, assuming we solve this COVID issue, you think people are going to go back to concerts, live entertainment, Times Square and Broadway, et cetera, right? People aren't going to.
Yeah, they already have. They already have. I mean,
there's something special about seeing a show with 1,000 other people, isn't it?
Well, it's also you're in the theater, so you get more involved emotionally. Your highs are higher, your lows are lower and stronger. I don't think there's any replacement for live theater and live concerts and the spontaneity.
Why is that? Because
you're the expert at this. It's real interesting. I never wanted to be a performer and be in front of the camera, which is, I know, unusual in my business. I never wanted to, and it's never about that ego or that talent, frankly. And I do see, the shows are a little different each time you see it. The audience reaction is a little different. Even the way the actors deliver a line, like I've seen some of my shows so many times, and I go, oh, we missed the laugh there, or oh, we got a bigger laugh there. Sometimes it's just a pause, sometimes it's just a shrug. But, and especially like, I can give you an example, like when I saw Bette Midler opening night in Hello, Dolly. That was one of the most incredible opening nights I'd ever been, because you knew you were seeing something once in a lifetime and special. And the audience, the energy in the audience, because you had all these celebrities, and it was just an unforgettable night. And I've been to hundreds. And, when they did the Hello, Dolly number, which is, probably 12 chorus men and her, and it just comes right at you. I mean, people were on their feet screaming, stop the show. She stopped the show 3 times, if I'm not mistaken. Just exuberance. And I'm sure, it's also that way when you see a play. A lot of people with Dear Evan Hansen and intermission, a lot of people stopped me in the aisle and said, thank you for this. I needed this right now. Frankly, I don't even know how they knew who I was, come to think of it. But this was just Saturday night.
Well, I got to tell you, I've had 2 experiences like that. One that you'll resonate with and one that you probably won't. But I went to see Barbra Streisand in Madison Square Gardens. I think it was the summer before COVID.
Right.
And she hadn't played Madison Square Gardens in a long time. And people didn't know, obviously, how many more concerts she would ever perform. And the Clintons were in the audience.
Yeah.
And, the mayor of New York was in the audience. Like all the luminaries of New York society were in the audience. And I had front row balcony seats, unbelievable view of the stage. And she was magnificent. Absolutely magnificent. I felt like I was part of history. And who knows, whether she'll do another concert in Madison Square Gardens. And Madison Square Gardens is such a,
Oh, it's a mecca. When you see Barbra Streisand or Billy Joel or someone like that at Madison Square Garden, when Frank and Liza and Sammy played Madison Square Garden, it's very special because they're all New Yorkers, and they're hometown kids, let's say.
Yeah.
And, it's just, I've seen them all over the country. But Billy Joel in particular, it's unbelievable because he's a Long Island guy. He's still from Long Island. A lot of people in his band are from Long Island. It's just like Diana Ross in Central Park. Certain artists have a real connection with the city, and they do a special show. They'll alter the material a little bit.
Well, a couple of weeks ago, I had a Toronto experience in that regard that I don't know if you'll know, but Gordon Lightfoot reopened Massey Hall. Massey Hall is one of the most iconic downtown old, I think it's 175-year-old, if not more, theaters that went through 2.5 years of renovations and reopened with him. And he is one of the performers that's played at Massey Hall more often than anyone else. And he reopened Massey Hall.
Right.
And he was given from the mayor of the city the keys to the city that night. And again, numerous luminaries were in the audience. I felt like I was part of history, and seeing it online or streaming it or, just listening to it on Spotify wouldn't have been the same. Being
right.
there.
That's right, because you get a lot of the live events that I'm doing are also being hybrid. So we've been streaming some as well if people can't go, or and they get a reduced price ticket. But when you go there and you're with other people, and it's the magic of it really is the magic of live that can't be replicated. Even Broadway shows, some of them I've seen, and they're, when you're there, it's a completely different experience. Also, in theater, sometimes what works in the theater won't work live. I've seen a few shows that I loved, and I watched them streamed, and I thought they either were overacting or there was no nuance because they were playing for the balcony. And I didn't need that because I'm, when you do a film, you can go close up, but theater is everything is a medium or a long shot.
I saw Pink in concert in an arena where she gets attached to this. I don't know whether it's a trapeze or something.
Yeah. I saw that too.
And she flies around the whole arena.
You can't. Back in the day when David Bowie did the Serious Moonlight tour, and he was just a genius to work with, and man, a few words, but just everything he said had was so fascinating. But we did at the end, we had this giant silver moon in Madison Square Garden that sort of moved. And as it moved over the audience, it dropped little gold moons on each person, and it was just the perfect, even I'll tell you, Dear Evan Hansen, Saturday night, we reopened on Broadway. So after the curtain call, first of all, when we first started, they stopped the show. We couldn't, it must have been 3 minutes of applause just from the first note of the first moment in the show. People were so glad to be back. And it was a spiritual thing, I think, for both the cast, the crew, and the world, and the people there. It was like a healing, if you know what I mean. And then at the end, our big song is You Will Be Found. And at the end, we had healthcare workers, a choir, all in blue. I must say about 10, maybe 15 lining the aisles, 15 in one aisle, 15 in another, singing You Will Be Found with the cast for the curtain call. And then at the end, we shot blue streamers out over the audience. You cannot duplicate that emotion, that high. At home, you can watch it, of course, but when you're in the theater, you get so choked up. And it was just, it's a release of, in this case, I think it's what we've all been through for a year and a half or 2 years, March, and we survived. You know what I mean? That's part of it. It's about survival, putting it behind you, moving on. And it was just, and I had, honestly, it was not my idea. It was just an incredible idea. And I was really so proud of our creative team for giving everybody that type of experience. Scott, including myself. I got very verklempt, Brian.
You've done a lot of what I would call variety shows,
yes.
With performers and comedy and like the old variety shows and they seem to have gone away. And I think the big trend in the last, decade actually has been reality TV shows, where it's The Bachelor or it's The Bachelorette or it's, someone on a beach in the South Pacific trying to kick everyone off. I miss the variety shows.
Yes, but if you notice, if you stretch your imagination, The Voice is a variety show. It's a competition, but it's a talent show. In an interesting way, American Idol started it all. But I don't know if you saw Tony Bennett and Lady Gaga at Radio City for Tony's final performance, or if you saw Adele on CBS. Adele's concert she did at Griffith Park, which is an outdoor observatory, astronomical, fixture, and then they did it outside. It was exquisite from beginning to end, from her song selection to the camera work to the video mapping on the building to her hair and makeup and her choice in dress and style. It was exquisite. And I have to vote in that category. And believe me, between Tony Bennett and Lady Gaga at Radio City and Adele and I don't know what else is coming down the pike. Those two shows, I mean, you just say, well, and they did good ratings. So people will seek it out. But you're right. I remember those TV specials. That's another reason that I went in this business, and I worked with a lot of those producers who inspired me. You know, you had those great variety shows. But the other thing is they're very expensive to produce and they don't deliver the ratings. So you can do these reality shows for much less money and they get ratings, but they don't cost as much. So the expectations aren't so much.
Yeah.
If you spend a lot of money I remember when Bette Midler did a special with Elton John and Cher, it was phenomenal and it probably won an Emmy. It did great ratings. If you spent all that money now and it doesn't give you the return, you think twice before doing it again.
We're chatting tonight with Scott Mauro. He's a famous Hollywood event producer, TV special producer, award show producer, marketer, promoter, man around town. We're going to take a break and come back with some concluding comments in just a minute. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour, Saga Night 60. We're chatting tonight with Scott Mauro. He's a live event producer, a award show producer, a performance producer, a Broadway producer, a gentleman that lives bi-coastal life in New York and Los Angeles, and a nice guy, and a very nice guy. So Scott, we really appreciate you joining us tonight. I had a Juno-nominated rock and roll performer on my show, and he said that the streaming music has destroyed the market, the model, the business model for performers, rock and roll and other types of performers, that if you're a big star and you can play the big arenas live and make money, then you can still earn a living, if not become, a millionaire. But he says for the regular people that used to be able to produce CDs or albums and sell those CDs or albums and make a living, they can't make a living. And he said, therefore, the only people in the next generation that are going to be able to be rock and roll stars are going to be either the huge mega stars and or people that have rich fathers or mothers, and so therefore can do it as a hobby, because the business model as a performer, because of streaming, is dead. And he says, compare that with films or books, where you haven't been able to completely copy the film and stream it on YouTube, nor the book and put it online. And so the music industry has been the one that has been most negatively impacted by the internet. And he says, I don't know what the solution is. I really don't know what the solution is, because you're not going to have as many. And he says, so many performers, they say they're overnight successes, but they're not. They had to struggle for 5-10 years and make money doing bar gigs. And you just can't make money doing bar gigs if you can't sell those CDs and albums. And he was bemoaning the future of the music industry. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I hate to say it, but I agree with him, because it's so readily available, and it's not even about the Billboard charts, and what's tracking. It is about downloads, et cetera, et cetera. But I do think, like Haim, which is a local group in LA, like they sold out the Hollywood Bowl, which is 18,000 seats, and they had to go a non-traditional route. In a funny way, I think it might help some, because it does give you exposure to then do a concert. I'm not sure about a big tour, but I think we're all a little bit concerned about it. Like movies, Warner Brothers redid their entire business model because everything has become so digital, and a lot of movies people don't go to see, but yet they'll watch at home. I don't think, and look at the networks, they're struggling. Occasionally they get a breakout hit, but you very rarely hear even the Emmy nominations, even the Golden Globe nominations, which came out today. Most of the nominees are from the Netflix, the Hulu, the Amazon sector, Apple Plus. But what I find encouraging is that the audience, people really do crave this, because really do crave entertainment. Because when you go around the country and you see what's happening in every city, whether it be, you know, startup bands, big concerts, as you mentioned, but also, you know, the number of touring Broadway shows, the number of, it's just remarkable. The audience has become much more sophisticated. And I think the internet has that, because you got to look at it the other way, that now people really know about Broadway. Broadway in particular has become cool. If you look at it, I mean, Ariana Grande is singing Wicked and going to be in the movie. You know what I mean? And then you had, you know, if you maybe they don't tune in, but they're still aware. Look at Hamilton. Hamilton is a phenomenon. Hamilton is very rare. You know, back in the day, you know, you wouldn't have had that type of national exposure. Yes, there would have been, but I can't tell you. Everybody knows. It seems like everybody knows these shows now, and that's kind of cool because of the connectivity of from the internet and from social media.
I also interviewed a gentleman that owns a big music studio, and he was saying concerts are going to change. You're going to have virtual reality. You're going to have a lot of other things that that immerse the concert goer even more into what's going on. What do you? You're a big producer. What do you see happening in live entertainment and concerts that's going to?
Yes, I agree with that, and yet there are some artists who don't want to do that, and it's the power of one. It really is. I'll never forget. I'll never forget backstage. Madonna was talking to Liza Minnelli at Radio City, and she said, basically, what we're trying to do is what you do. Sing your song in front of an orchestra, and weave your magic and hold the audience in the palm of your hand. And I never equated Madonna with Liza Minnelli, but I heard it with my own ears. It's many, many years ago. But that was really, really what it comes down to. Is I don't care if you're Kanye West and you have, you know, 50-piece string ensemble, or if you're just, well, you know, Tony Bennett in front of, with a piano, bass, and drum. It's all about the connection to the audience. And it really is, she was very right. That's all that you're trying to do. I don't, you could be the Rolling Stones, you know, it's just, it's a real interesting, the constant is about connecting with your audience and pleasing, in a sense, pleasing them, but I don't mean that in a negative way.
We've had this big change in who are the producers of films from, you know, the companies like Disney or Warner Brothers in the past to, who is it? You know, Amazon and Google and Apple and people like that. Is that trend going to continue, do you think?
Totally. I do. And if you look at old movies, like I've been watching a lot of old Christmas movies because it's the holiday season, there's such a difference between today's films and the films that were done on sound stages. You know, everything now is a little bit, is more real. Even the style of acting, the writing. It's really interesting if you watch those old movies from the big studios, you know, and that's the influence of independence. You know, like this year, Belfast is getting so much attention, just to name one. And also, if you look at it, because of streaming, documentaries have never been hotter. Because documentaries, there's one area that's benefiting, like Meet Mayor Pete, the documentary on the Beatles, which is fantastic. All that, you know, footage that Peter Jackson, a movie director, put together. I guess I'm an optimist. I hear myself that I'm so sugar-coated, but it's great in some ways and bad in other ways, almost like anything when you with progress.
What are you concerned about? What worries you about your industry?
That's a good question. I know this is a very, very specific, is that I do find that sometimes it's all about flash and not substance. And I forgot who it was that just recently, a very famous singer who said sometimes these performers it's more about showing off than about serving the material. And I think sometimes that really happens. Sometimes the one who screams the loudest or does, you know, is the one that gets noticed, but that may not be the most talented. I'm a sucker for talent. I mean, I can't tell you, sometimes I've discovered people at showcases or, people said to me, where did you find that person? And it's like, oh, I found this 17-year-old young woman and put her into a show and she did one song and stopped the show. I'm a sucker for talent. And if you find a young dancer or anybody, good is good. Who used to say that? Gold is gold. Somebody told me gold is gold.
I got to tell you, the line that I loved, and this may be trite, but when in that movie A Star Is Born, where the old rocker tells the young ingenue that if you're going to perform, you have to have something to say. And I like that. I always thought that if you actually had a message in what you were performing, you were far more impactful.
That's right.
And I think that that's one of the keys, is that whether it's a movie or a song or Hamilton is one of the best examples. A show. You should have a message. You should be wanting to actually say something.
But there's a reason. I got to tell you one great story. I know I don't want to run long, but there's one great story. Frank Sinatra to the very end was a perfectionist, and if he came off stage and just didn't feel it was a good performance, it bothered him on the way to his car. On the way to the limo, and he demanded. I mean, I was backstage many times. He once came in. He said, "Scott, can you clear the green room? I want to vocalize. Wheel in a piano for me." And I thought, isn't that amazing? He's X number of years old. He's been doing this, and he still wants to make sure that he's giving the audience the best. He had such respect for the audience that you probably heard this story, but he insisted that everyone in his show, I don't care what your day was like, but when you're out there, you have to give 100% because these hardworking Americans, hardworking fans that save up their money to come see me, and it's a privilege. And that's why he always wore a tuxedo and made everyone in his show wear a tuxedo, even if it was the opening act, the opening comic, because he paid such respect to the audience. And I don't know if every artist today feel that way. I think some of them I get the feeling they have a little attitude, and we're lucky that they grace us with their presence in a sense. He never took his audience for granted. And I find that that's what it is. And even if I'm doing a small benefit to help some incredible cause, I want to deliver 110% to whoever is coming, because they deserve that. I try to make every event and everything I do almost feel like it's opening night, if you know what I mean by that.
Scott Mauro, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Well, that's our show for tonight, everyone. We've been chatting with Scott Mauro, a wonderful gentleman who you should take notice of, because he's one of these guys that's been behind a lot of the famous variety shows and performances and Broadway shows and other things, award shows that we've all had the privilege of enjoying over the course of the last little while. Scott Mauro, thanks so much. Good night, everybody.